Goodbye Eerie starts with our main character Yuta getting the task of filming his sick mother's last words. The opening panels of the story show Yuta and his mother in all kinds of situations, taking Yuta to the aquarium, hanging out at the house, and eventually ending up in the hospital where Yuta is supposed to film her last words. However, Yuta is only 12 years old, and dealing with death is not something that any 12-year-old should be equipped to deal with, so Yuta runs away, not wanting to face his mother's last words. This tragic moment turns to shock when the hospital blows up, and then we find out that we are actually reading about a film that Yuta made, and it's playing in his school. This is the story of Goodbye Eerie, and the 200-page one-off has now stuck in my mind for weeks to the point where I needed to make a video on it. One-shots are often hit or miss in manga, especially when it comes from an author who makes their living in the world of long-running series, like the author of Goodbye Eerie, Tatsuki Fujimoto. Fujimoto is the author of the current mega-hit Chainsaw Man and other popular series like Fire Punch. When I think of the best one-offs in manga, my mind immediately goes to Junji Ito and the horror genre. No genre is better suited to this sort of format like horror because of how easy horror concepts can be. Goodbye Eerie is not a horror story, but a drama about dealing with the grief that comes when a loved one dies. Goodbye Eerie functions on many different levels, which is the key reason it has stuck in my mind. The nuance for this story is incredible, and in this story, Fujimoto explores how we deal with death, the importance of art, reader expectations, while showing complete mastery over the manga medium. The tonal switches of the story stand out first, which Fujimoto achieves by playing with the reader's expectations. The first shift in the story comes at the moment I mentioned earlier, when the hospital blows up. When you first stumble on that page, your mind immediately warps, questioning if this is even real. Could the building really have blown up? Then you flip the page and you find out that the entire thing we have been reading is fictionalized. This isn't necessarily every moment, but a string of moments that Yuta chose to put into his movie. Fujimoto knows that after we read the first couple of pages, we make assumptions on what the story will be about. It is a drama grounded in reality, exploring a 12-year-old's grief. So when explosions start happening, it catches us off guard, but pulls focus to the manipulation of information that Fujimoto uses to get the story across. Yuta's mother seems like a caring and kind person at the start of the story. That is what we are shown by Yuta in his film and Fujimoto in the manga. Yuta's mother being kind. The reader has no reason to assume that it would be otherwise until we find out later in the story that Yuta's mother was actually very selfish and never treated Yuta as well as it appears in the start of the story. This recontextualizes the wholesome start. We now see that making your 12-year-old son record you in your final days isn't necessarily a good thing, and that even years later, if Yuta would be thankful that he did record these moments, it still makes the loss of his mother even harder to bear. In those final moments, you aren't living to spend them with your mother, but so you can spend time with her later in your life. This isn't the only time that Fujimoto plays with readers' expectations. The entire structure of the story and the final twist at the end hinges on assumptions that the reader makes throughout. But before we get to that, now would be a good time to mention Eerie. So far in the video, I have solely focused on Yuta in his relationship with his mother, but the majority of the story is Yuta hanging out with Eerie, a girl that he met on the roof of the hospital, who doesn't have long to live. When Yuta showed his classmates his movie, they all found it insensitive to have his mother be blown up at the end. The only person who liked it was Eerie, mainly because the movie had so much of Yuta's personality in it. They study movies for the rest of the story, getting Yuta to prepare for his next movie, another documentary focused on Eerie's last days. And eventually Eerie passes away, and then years go by and Yuta makes his second film, cuts and recuts the movie, but still something feels off. Until one day he goes back to the old warehouse where they would watch movies, and he sees Eerie, the same age as she was back then, watching Yuda's movie. Turns out Eri is a vampire and had that movie made so she could remember what her life was like as her past self. And in the end, she too feels that there is something missing. And of course, at the end, Yuda figures out what is missing. An explosion. His story needed a bit of fantasy in it, his own personality, and that's what makes it worth watching. The fantasy genre itself is often looked down upon when compared to more realistic genres in fiction. Fujimoto breaks down that idea in Goodbye Eri, arguing that fantasy can reveal just as much about humanity as any other genre. Goodbye Eri interrogates expectations in art and why we should always understand that every piece of art never tells the full truth, because there isn't one that really exists. On top of this, and at the center of the story, is how we grieve for those we have lost. Something that no matter how many times we go through, we will never truly be able to find the answer for. It doesn't matter if you're 12 or you're in your 40s, losing those you love is never something that is easy to deal with. But the one thing that we can do, just like Yuda, is stay true to ourselves, and this is true for Fujimoto's unique style of storytelling. What is maybe most shocking to me about the story is just how much nuance Fujimoto layers into these 200 pages. The story is surprising up until the end, using our expectations against us to reveal another layer to the story. Fujimoto has proven time and time again that he is one of the best mangaka working right now. I love to see short-form stories that attempt to take on more than just a concept, but the medium that it lives in as well. Goodbye Eri is legitimately one of the most refreshing things I have read recently, and I believe it is because of how it questions so much in such a short amount of time. And in the end, I just totally agree with Fujimoto. Isn't everything better with a little bit of fantasy? Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I know Goodbye Eri has been out for a little while now, but I figured it was still a good time to make a video, and I think if you haven't read this short story and you watch this video, you definitely should go read it, and definitely make sure to check out rest of Fujimoto's works, and I hope to see you in the next one.